Hi, welcome. I'm sitting today with Douglas Beal, author and creator of the novel Forgiveness. I know Douglas from growing up on the same street that he lived on and creating a good friendship with his daughter, Karina, who I still hold as a close, dear friend today. My father also worked in law enforcement with Douglas. And now I have a master's degree in counseling and work for a county agency and free children. So, Douglas, as we're here today, can you tell me a little bit about what motivated you to write Forgiveness?
Yes. Well, as you know, Jenna, I retired from law enforcement and began teaching college courses in Ventura County. While I was still at the PD, I got a master's in philosophy, and so it was philosophy classes that I was teaching. Along the way, I picked up courses at California Lutheran University, put about 20 years with them, became a senior lecturer, and I still teach the community college classes to this day. I think it was about 2015 that I found that Amazon allowed you to submit a manuscript and they would set it up as a print on demand book. So anyone could write on any topic, a cookbook about their cars, and it would go up on their website, and then if a purchase was made, it would be printed at that point, which of course bypasses all the publishing houses. Well, at that time, I was using a classic introduction to philosophy book by a major publisher, 1,000 pages, hardbound, well illustrated, but it was costing the students over $150. And I thought I could reduce that substantially if I just did my own textbook, which I did, and it was a win-win for the students because now they had the class notes. Then I thought a couple years later, well, why not do a novel? Because I'd always been interested in coming up with a compelling storyline that would integrate some of the historical philosophical themes, which leads us to forgiveness.
Yeah. On your website, you had mentioned that it had taken 8 years to write Forgiveness or until you felt that it was ready for self-publishing.
Yes, and 8 years may seem like a long time. I guess it is, but I wasn't in any hurry. I had no time crunch. I wasn't trying to make a name for myself. I was financially comfortable. So it kind of became a journey that was almost an end in itself, if that makes any sense. And along the way, I learned some surprising things. For instance, these characters became very real to me. And I would sit down sometimes to advance the narrative. I had some preconceived ideas where we wanted to go. And these characters would kind of set their own agenda. Wait a minute, he doesn't want to say that. And so I read about this. Authors talk about this, and but experiencing it was a whole different thing. Now here's the bottom line, Jenna. Reading philosophy by the great philosophers uh, has better efficacy at putting you to sleep than the best medication on the market. And that's because they have to write in a very stilted way. They used esoteric terms, and they refer to other esoteric terms in philosophy. So it can be kind of difficult. So my goal with Forgiveness was to develop a story that would incorporate some of the historical themes in a way that would not only entertain, but instruct.
Wow, what a great thought process through that. I'm wondering, so who then, as you're thinking about forgiveness, is your target audience?
Well, that's always a big question, isn't it? Uh, um, so the reviewers that have been positive talk about this as an historical fiction. Others will say it doesn't fit any particular genre. The main character, the protagonist, name is Petey. He to avoid a bad family situation, is drafted, or joins the draft rather, and then is sent into the Marine Corps. Along the way, he gravitates towards philosophy. And one of the things that happens is he's had some traumatic experiences, and he starts to think about forgiveness, but he thinks about it in the biblical sense, because forgiveness implies forgetting. There's a scripture that says something to the effect, forgiveness keeps no records of wrongs. And this is of a concern to him. But I think I'm straying away from your question. Let's go back to readership. So let's say if you're a person getting ready to take a flight, and you pick up a paperback that you want to be a nice pleasant read, kind of escapism, this book may not be your cup of tea, because this book is going to give you raw descriptions of war, of civilian policing, problems within families, and it's not going to provide a lot of easy solutions. So it's going to challenge the reader, but I think they'll find it a worthwhile challenge.
It sounds like it's a book that really has a basis that everybody can relate to, with some more serious undertones and action packed, it sounds like. Now, Douglas, I know you. I know that you are a Vietnam veteran and also worked a big career in law enforcement. How much of this novel is semi-autobiographical?
Good question. Semi-autobiographical isn't necessarily vague. I mean, it is what you said, but it's hard to quantify maybe. So let me just draw some differences. The main character, Petey, like I said, volunteers for the draft, is pushed into the Marine Corps because the Marine Corps can't keep up with its casualty rate, and is wounded twice in Vietnam. And then he comes back, and at the very earliest age possible, 21, joins the police department. Well, that wasn't quite my pathway. I mean, I was in the Marines. I spent a year in Vietnam. I wasn't wounded. I came back and actually worked at my old job in a factory, and then several years later gravitated towards law enforcement. The other thing about Petey is his goal of teaching community college post-LAPD never happens for him, where I've been very fortunate in being able to have a college teaching career. The bottom line on that is that the reviewers know that I know the landscape, or it seems clear that I can understand Petey's experience, maybe in a way different than others. And that's why some of the reviews have said that this storyline is all too realistic.
Hmm. Well, Douglas, in this short interview, I've had the opportunity to learn a few new things about you that I didn't know. Are there any other final thoughts that you would like to share with your potential reader?
Well, I think in every class, Jenna, I've talked about Socrates. I mean, that's one of the big names in early Greek philosophy. And he is reported to have said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And, we're all traveling between two walls, the wall of birth to the wall of death. And what's on the other side of those walls, in my view, is highly speculative, but we kind of have a sense of the here and now. And there's usually time to do a lot of things. In my view, serious introspection should be one of those things. And the protagonist, Petey, is into self-reflection. And he does take a hard look at philosophy and gets interested in it, and then struggles with trying to rectify some things in his own mind. Now, he rejects his mother's religious orientation, but he doesn't reject scriptural principles. And I don't think that's an isolated struggle. I think a lot of people, have serious doubts and thoughts. And once again, in terms of philosophy, it is a surprise to many of my students that the great philosophers of the late Middle Ages and the Enlightenment were very religious, and that they tried to reconcile some of the problems of living with the problems with the teachings. So I think that I would tell my readers, expect to be challenged. Don't expect an easy answer. But I think you walk away with a book that you felt was a good read, and you'll still have some pains in your own mind you'll need to unpack.
Yeah, it sounds like something we can all relate to in a variety of different ways. Well, thank you, Douglas, so much for getting an opportunity to sit down for this interview. I wish you the best of luck with Forgiveness, the novel, and can't wait to see the reader's response to it.
Well, thank you, Jenna, for consenting to do this interview.
Yeah, of course, anytime.